Hearthstone Championship Tour makes history! It's go time! This is the Hearthstone Spring Championship!
Hello everybody and welcome to the final day of the 2017 HCT Spring Championship. It's a huge crowd here at the Shanghai Expo Center, and these fans can't wait to see which 4 players are moving on to the World Championship and who will be crowned the Spring Champion. My name is TJ, and joining me on the desk to kick off the show is Nathan That's Admirable Zamora and Simon Sottle Welch. And there's very little empty seats right now, and this is, I think, the most electrifying we've seen the crowd so far over the 3 days, and I can't wait to get started.
It's so great to experience, and I couldn't be happier to be here. This has been one of the most stacked fields we've ever had. This is one of the best crowds I've ever experienced. It's just something magical.
Yeah, and this is the culmination. This is months of work. This is the grinding on ladder. This is the pounding through open cups. This is the fighting your way through the playoff system to make it here, and now there's only one game left between you and the World Championship, and you are backed by this crowd that can only be described as, I need a word, Nathan. Can you help me out?
It starts with an H.
Something, I don't know.
TJ?
Humongous.
There we go.
Yeah, that's
All
the
right.
one.
That's what it is. But there's a couple of big stories coming into the final day, and I think one of the ones that's on our mind, a lot of the fans' mind, especially the crowd's mind here as we move forward to the final 8, is that the regions seem to have a pretty big disparity in who had some success and who didn't. Most notably China, who we don't have a single player left in the top 8 from the Chinese region, and we still don't have a representative at the World Championship.
It's been a rough tournament for them for sure. It started out about as abysmally as you could imagine, and that continued into day 2 where all of the remaining representatives were eliminated. A lot of that, I think, comes down to lineups. A little bit of play could have been tightened up, but I'm not sure that the play actually would have influenced much outside of the actual choices of decks that they made.
Yeah, now the pressure is really on for all the regions that remain in this, and the pressure points are very different for different players. For Kalento, it's about completing this illustrious return to competitive Hearthstone. For Ant, it's about validating this escape for Hearthstone from some of the lesser exciting areas of his life and just validating all the time that he's put into it. For Nyria, it's about backing up this consistent year with a World Championship finish. But the one thing that's consistent between all of the players is there is one game with everything on the line now, World Championship qualification.
Yeah, now we can take a look at those records separated by a region here. And the big story as we look at this is the European dominance, 8-3. All 4 players that started in the groups made it into the quarterfinals. So, I mean, what can we say? We saw the stacked field at the beginning, but are you surprised by this at all, Admirable?
I'm not surprised by it at all. I mean, look at these 4 guys. These are 4 of the most storied careers in Hearthstone. They brought the right lineups.
Yes.
We saw near perfect play from all of these guys. We saw similar lineups on the Americas side, but sometimes it's not your day. These guys had everything going for them. They had the skill, they had the luck, they had it all.
And I think you hit the nail on the head there, lineups. I think for me, Europe has always been the best region, maybe not mechanical play, maybe not what actually happens on the game board, but at reading the metagame. Asia Pacific, China, they take more risky decisions with their deck building. Sometimes that pays off, sometimes it crashes and burns. America tend to often read the wrong side of the metagame, but Europe, for me, consistently get it right time and time again, and that's why their results speak for themselves.
Even Hoej, who was, notably a player whose main weakness was the lineups that he brought to tournaments, brought a great lineup, and he's going to be in the first match that's coming up today. So let's go ahead and take a look at our quarterfinals. Starting things off, CitizenNappa, the dark horse from Australia, up against Hoej, the player who we talked about. And then second quarterfinal is going to be Mage, who's a player that sort of came out of nowhere at the beginning of 2017, versus Ant, sort of the opposite for him, a player that's been around since the very beginning.
It's a lot of what Asia Pacific has been about as well, is new emerging trends. They've been thought to be one of the weaker regions. They're proving that wrong this tournament.
And then moving on, quarterfinal number 3, Quonet, who has picked up a legion of new fans in this event, myself included. He'll be going up against the new Mr. Consistency in Nyria. And then our final quarterfinal, can you ask for anything more? 2 of the stalwarts of the competitive scene going all the way back to 2014, RDU versus Kalento. That is going to be peak.
Yeah, that'll be the 4th match of the day. I cannot wait for that one. I'm sure the Chinese crowd, who no longer a Chinese player to root for, but Kalento, who probably has a bigger fan base here than most of the Chinese players. So going to be a lot of great quarterfinals. But to give you guys a little bit of a preview of the first match of the day, let's head over to the commentator's desk with Frodan and Brian Kibler.
Thank you very much, TJ, and what a warm intro it is to the final day of the spring season here for the Hearthstone Championship Tour. My name is Frodan. I am joined by the always lovely and handsome Brian Kibler. Kibler, how's been the first 2 days here being in China?
It's been really incredible. Just being in this incredible venue in front of this crowd. It's gotten bigger and better every single day. So much going on. It's just an absolutely incredible experience.
And it's promised to be really exciting. In day number 3, to kick things off, we have CitizenNappa from Australia up against Hoej from Denmark. Now, if we take a step back and look at their lineups, they might look similar on paper, but there's a couple differences that might make the edges for these players tilt in their favor. We took a look at mid-range Murloc Paladin and how Hoej has been one of the big forefront pioneers, pushing things like Vinecleaver and Deathwing onto the forefront. And then CitizenNappa, he's been playing rock solid, has a couple of interesting tech choices himself, and I was anticipating Hoej maybe looking at the Shaman ban, but he's banning the Aggro Druid.
I actually had a chance to talk to these players briefly this morning before their match. And I was mentioning how, well, Nappa's deck didn't have the Hungry Crabs to really punish the Paladin. And Nappa was like, oh, he's just going to ban it anyway. It's too good against his lineup. So turns out he was right. And that's exactly the ban that Hoej threw in.
All right, well, I'll go ahead and look at that match in a couple of minutes here. But we hope you guys are excited to begin the quarter matches. Remember, it's single elimination. So let's go ahead and hop over to TJ for our player introductions.
Thanks very much. One thing that I'm always excited for about Hearthstone tournaments is Dan's cutting-edge Hearthstone fashion. Never ceases to disappoint. It really is beautiful.
The accessories are on point today as well. The little pin hung off the chain.
Yeah, real nice, real nice. But we're about to get started with some action. So quickly, as we get closer to the first match, I want to get your guys' prediction. Who's going to take the whole thing? Not just qualify for the World Championship, but become the spring champion. Admirable.
During his interview, he said wins are what matter as a professional player. I picked him for the European playoffs. He brought it home, and I'm sticking with it here. I think Hoej played perfectly yesterday. I think Hoej's taking it all.
Yeah, sticking with the guns is the theme running throughout. I'm going to stick with Mage. I called him out all the way back in one of the first weeks of HGG as a player to look out for. I then followed that through in playoffs, picking him for that. He rewarded me on that pick with a trophy of my very own, and now he is going to be able to take home a much more illustrious trophy, in my opinion.
I have not been the best at picking champions.
It's because you keep letting other people take them off you.
True.
Hoej, Mage, they were yours both originally.
They were, but I'm a man of the people. I like to keep my friends happy. But I'm going to go with RDU. Talking with the players earlier this week, most of the players said they were most afraid of RDU's lineup. They said they thought that he read the meta the best out of anybody here. He's got a favorable matchup against Kalento, which will probably be his toughest opponent, and I think he'll just cruise through to the spring champion title right then. So we got some predictions here. Hope you guys have some predictions at home. It's going to be a great day filled with great Hearthstone action, but it's time to bring out our first player of our first match. Starting things off, the one Dane to rule them all, it's Hoej. And his opponent, the dark horse from Australia. It's his birthday today. It's CitizenNappa.
Quarterfinal number 1, CitizenNappa versus Hoej.
I haven't heard about CitizenNappa going into this tournament. He has to be good since he won his group.
Hoej is a player that I've seen on Twitch many times, competing in tournaments. He's a player that I respect a lot.
I think it's going to be a tough matchup for sure, but I think I can beat him.
That being said, however, I'm not afraid to verse him. I think my lineup is at least slightly favored, and if I play well, then I don't think it matters who my opponent wins.
It feels really insane that I'm only one match away from qualifying for the World Championship.
Today is my birthday. I'm turning 20 today, and for my birthday, I want a ticket to the World Championships.
CitizenNappa versus Hoej. Ready, set, go!
First quarterfinal is underway. Welcome, everybody, to day number 3 of the Hearthstone Championship Tour spring season. Hope you guys have enjoyed the stops so far. First quarterfinal is CitizenNappa from Australia up against Hoej from Denmark. If you guys are just coming in, hope you guys are ready for some fireworks. This matchup promises to be fast and furious, but no mistakes are really allowed. With cutting edge and lineups like this, Kibler, one mistake can be fatal.
Yeah, these are very aggressive lineups. And really, I think ultimately the key to this matchup is going to be the Quest Rogue from both players. Not because it's a powerful deck, but because it's actually so bad in the matchup. Because their decks are very aggressive, it is a deck that will very much struggle to find a win. And Hoej is kicking things off with his Quest Rogue, trying to find that win right away.
That's right, and remember the bans are a little bit unusual here. We do have the Shaman banned, which was expected away from Hoej, but Hoej has banned the Aggro Druid, and we'll see if that ends up paying off dividends in the later stages. And remember, it doesn't matter how they got here. The records are different, but we are in single elimination playoffs now. You lose, you go home, you win, you're through to the World Championships, and you live to play on for the crown.
One interesting thing that we saw from Hoej yesterday with his Quest Rogue play was actually a very keen sense of when he needed to play for the board and not even play his quest. Look at this. He's playing turn 1 Fire. This is something that you do see sometimes, but yesterday even, he actually delayed playing his quest in some games until as late as turn 5, which just goes to show that he has an incredible grasp of how he needs to navigate a lot of these more aggressive matchups because they're so difficult.
Absolutely, and I think that Firefly is a reflection of a trend that Quest Rogues are identifying. For whatever amount of short life shelf that they have these days, Quest Rogue really needs to stop the aggressive pressure early on by establishing board control, and Firefly isn't exactly always the minion you want to get the quest off. If you get Igneous Elemental, Flame Elemental can be a way that you can trigger the quest.
Yeah, and you almost always will have the same number of Flame Elementals as you have Fireflies, so you really don't need to get the quest down to ensure you have the trigger on the Firefly. And here, Hoej, still no quest. He's just going to go ahead and dagger up and try to put some damage on this Primal Finto.
CitizenNappa does have a way to easily answer that with his Jade Claws. He coined out his Primal Phantom to originally get some semblance of board, and now he's the second one, which he can use on the following turn after he establishes more board presence with his Jade Claws.
And now Hoej does have a South Sea deck hand to potentially use, pulling out the patches from his deck to take down the totem as well as clear this entire board.
Yeah, I think that sounds really appetizing because you know your opponent's overloaded, so there's a lot of 3-mana plays your opponent would like to get out but are a little bit clunky, so you restrict them to 2-mana plays. You do lose, you know, the South Sea Tech can to the Jade Claws, but at least you're keeping Shaman board restricted, which is ultimately what's key. You don't want them to ever be able to threaten Bloodlust or be able to tuck really powerful minions behind Flame Tongue Totem, and as a result, you lose control of the board and just get pressured out of the game.
And you know, it's just so important for Hoej to navigate these early turns in a way that does prevent CitizenNappa from developing that significant board presence. Even just an evolve on some of these small minions can be really important because Nappa can turn his totems and 1/1s into potentially 2 or 3 attack minions.
All right, Hoej looks like he's going to start clearing a little bit of the board, and you know, we were talking about the importance of it, but more importantly, again, this is probably one of more winnable matchups. Look at Pirate Warrior, that's way harder. And of course, that's why he banned Aggro Druid. That would have been one of the worst. So Hoej either has to win this or he has to win the Quest Rogue Mirror, because I peg him as the underdog based off the way the lineup shaped up.
Yeah, I think that the fact that CitizenNappa had the Aggro Druid, which Hoej felt deserved a ban, and Hoej has the Paladin. The Paladin's a bit more vulnerable to the aggressive decks in CitizenNappa's lineup. So he was able to keep his Shaman available, which is a very powerful deck in aggro mirrors.
All right, so Hoej ends up playing the Flame Elemental again for the board control, and he's keeping his options open if he needs to bounce another one of those minions, or even use Swashbuckler as a potential bounce.
Yeah, crucially, Hoej has not actually committed any bounce effects to any minion. So often, if you've committed a bounce effect, you're pretty much required to protect future copies of that minion in order to ensure that you get the chance to complete the quest. But because Hoej still has not actually used a Shadow Step or a Brewmaster or anything, he can just play out his minions for board presence and try to just protect himself that way.
Yeah, we kind of mentioned that Nappa was gearing for this play specifically, playing Primal Totem after he overloaded with that weapon, restricting 2 mana that turn. And if he wants to protect his totem, killing off the pirate seems ideal, but then your opponent gets a free value trade with the Flame Elemental into the 1/1.
There's a Shadow Step for Hoej, so he could be off to the races pretty soon.
Yeah.
Swashbuckler can find him something valuable from the Shaman class. Jade Lightning. That could be a powerful tool to allow him to clear off some of CitizenNappa's minions, and particularly some of these powerful totems.
Yeah, and you know, one of the really funny things about some of the classes that have been dominant for a long time, like Paladin, Hunter, Shaman, they all had periods of dominance over the metagame. And one of the best ways to kill them was actually to play the same class cards. Like Hunter lost their Secrets to Flare or Unleashed the Hounds, countered Freezing Trap, and Shaman got swept by Lightning Storm, Maelstrom Portal.
I'm actually sort of looking at, you know, Hoej could potentially prep out Jade Lightning if he really wanted to here to clear off this totem, but he's going to go ahead and take it a little bit slower. He's not under much pressure. And this this Primal Fin Totem is not representing too much threat, so he can just take things slow and wait until he perhaps prep out a Vanish or the quest itself.
Yeah, and he's being extremely patient. He had double Shadow Step available, and a lot of people might feel inclined to Shadow Step maybe the Swashbuckler and hold on to it, but Hoej says, I want to keep my options open. I don't know what's behind the door, and my opponent doesn't have any ability to kill off these minions directly. If he has Jade Lightning, another Jade Claws, a Flame Tongue Totem, most likely I keep another minion on the board.
As long as Hoej has any minion that can he can bounce, his double Shadow Step plus one more bounce effect will enable him to complete the quest. This ends up going slightly bad for him because if he does lose the Swashbuckler, he no longer has a value-generating minion that he can actually bounce.
Right, but then CitizenNappa knows it's more likely that my opponent has Flame Elemental targets, and that is usually the public enemy because there's only one other Swashbuckler in the deck. Maybe my opponent's holding the Vanishes, maybe he's holding you know, a Preparation instead, and one of those Shaman cards.
Definitely a calculation there for CitizenNappa deciding to take that down. Glacial Shard picked up for Hoej. I think we may see the Jade Lightning this turn to take down the Flame Tongue Totem simply because it is a significant threat. Right. It's actually turning every other minion that CitizenNappa plays into a significant threat as well. The Stone Claw was actually pretty important for Nappa here because it did protect his Primal Fin Totem from removal. You know, if for instance he had gotten a spell damage or healing stream or even a searing totem, he would have been in a pretty rough spot getting both of his significant threats removed this turn.
And you're talking about removing both of those threats. Hoej, after the Jade Lightning, does have one more mana available. I'm imagining he wants to keep Preparation because his hand is so cheap overall across the board. But if he commits Glacial Shard, now he is vulnerable to double removal because of the threat of Maelstrom Portal. Right. So he does have to kind of make up a decision whether or not he wants to keep one of those minions in hand, maybe not play the Glacial Shard, or if he wants to commit more to the board and throw caution to the wind here.
Hoej is definitely taking his time and calculating all of this.
I guess the nice thing about the Jade Lightning is it does summon another minion, so it kind of baits out that Maelstrom Portal preemptively. So it is kind of, you know, sad that you lose the Swashbuckler as a potential value generator, like you said. Hoej's going to really need some more extra stuff off the top. So this now picks up another Flame Tongue Totem.
And with a Mana Tide Totem or a Stonehill Defender here, he can fit in alongside it. He can potentially protect his Flame Tongue and protect his Primal Fin Totem, which could cause this board to start kind of spiraling out of control for Hoej, who has not found any real way to make progress on his quest.
But if he does pick up a quest, a bounce generator, he could finish the quest next turn.
It's true.
Because he has the ability to Glacial Shard, bounce it with a 2-mana bouncer, play it, and then Shadow Step it twice, and that equals to 6 mana perfectly.
Yeah, the big problem there, though, is if he is using it with Glacial Shard specifically, he's not generating any value, and he'll have literally a 5/5 to actually use to try and fight against CitizenNappa. He'd need to pick up something that would generate additional minions for him to be significant threat.
He'll have 2 5/5s, but you know, if Shaman does deal with it with Flame Tongue Totem, and that's where the Primal Totem can be really clutch, that might be the difference maker. Nappa going to go ahead and pick up that free trade. This is actually where Stonehill Defender shines. What a big draw here for Hoej.
And that's exactly what he's looking for these Shadow Steps.
Wow.
And there's the Brewmaster as well.
Oh my goodness.
Who's going off?
That he is going off. He's going to count to make sure that he does it, but if he Shadow Steps, he gets that Novice Engineer twice on the board for free, plays Youth for Brewmaster, plays the Novice Engineer again, and then preps Quest. Am I miscounting here?
You are miscounting because he actually has to spend the full mana for the Novice Engineer the additional time. So he can't actually complete the quest this turn. He can't play the quest this turn with the Preparation. So he's playing a 0-mana engineer, 0-mana engineer, but then he has to play Brewmaster plus the engineer again.
Right.
But Vanish is a huge pickup for Hoej here. This is one of the most powerful cards in this matchup. The Shaman deck is incredibly reliant on developing significant board presence. So if the Rogue is able to remove that with Vanish and have significant development of its own, it can be very difficult for the Shaman to get back into the game.
That's right, and Hoej's at a high life total, so he will be able to take a little bit of punishment too and not be afraid of the threat of backstab. Or sorry, be afraid of the threat of bloodlust as he picks up the backstab, which also cements further his board position here.
And recognizes that he cannot actually play the quest this turn, wants to hold on to his engineer so that he could potentially play the engineer plus the quest itself in the same turn. So he's not losing his board that he's developing to removal from Nappa.
And Nappa kind of knows what's going on here. He sees the third bounce, which means that it's inevitable for that novice engineer to finish the quest. And if your opponent has no preparation, that's just the quest right there. But if he has preparation, he can squeeze in a few more minions, which could be disastrous.
All right, that's actually just a visual positioning bug. We saw this actually early yesterday in one of Nappa's matches. It looked a little bit weird. There it goes. It finally gets to the right spot with the flame tongue there.
My goodness. You know, this is quite the big board now, and Bloodlust is very much a threat in this position. Hoej has Novice Engineer as a way to finish the quest. If he preps the quest, then he also has Glacial Shard to maybe stall. Backstab wouldn't kill anything except the 2/2 and the 1/1s.
This is interesting because this is a board that's now extremely threatening. There's 6 minions on the board, so a Bloodlust alone is 18. So Hoej does need, I think Hoej needs to vanish. I think Hoej needs to commit his mana, perhaps with the preparation, to vanishing here, which would mean that he can't actually play the prep as well this or the quest as well this turn.
But if he does have the ability to remove 2 minions to attack with Backstab and Glacial Shard. So that means Bloodlust only does 12, and if you minimize the damage, you should take only 16. And which means he's technically safe from a Bloodlust, and he knows that's a second Flame Tongue Totem. It looks like he doesn't even want to bother with that. So he's just going to go for the prep Vanish instead. And get board presence. This is a really interesting sequence that I wasn't expecting. Use for Brewmaster preemptively, so that way he can get more guaranteed minions onto the board here.
So now he's forcing Nappa to use his mana to deal with his board rather than develop his own. So Hoej's recognizing, okay, maybe you have a Jade Claws, or maybe you have a Maelstrom Portal, but that's going to stunt your own development. Now I can develop my quest and my minions after the fact. This is a very heads-up play from Hoej.
Yeah, I like it the more I look at it, and this is why when people were watching Hoej play Quest Rogue yesterday, saying, I have a lot to learn in the short time that I have remaining with the deck. Nappa has no way to respond to. No claws, no portal, and that is 2 guaranteed 5/5 minions on the board for the next turn.
And this is a situation that's very difficult for the Shaman to respond to, because one of the Shaman's most powerful ways to deal with opposing large boards is actually the card we just saw burn, which is Devolve. Once the quest is complete, Devolve does nothing. Everything is still a 5/5. And your other main way to remove minions, Maelstrom Portal. That does 1 damage. Doesn't do much against 5/5.
Yeah, against Igneous Elemental, that's usually what Devolve wants to hit in the matchup early on. But even in the late stage of the game, as long as you can't really deal with those 5/5s, you're going to just get crazy behind on the board because your opponent just keeps getting value trades. Your only best bet is to keep going wider and wider onto the board.
And that's exactly what Nappa's doing. He's trying to ensure that he's able to maintain some element of board presence. This Igneous Elemental, in fact, both of them, pretty bad draws from Hoej, because at this stage of the game, he really just wants to find cheap minions that he can play and tempo out as quickly as possible, but these are the most expensive minions in his entire deck.
They are, but I don't think I hate it that much, considering that Hoej still has the ability to get a lot of card draw out and be able to flood, assuming that these 5/5s end up getting dealt with, because the Shaman's just going to fall further behind. Cards like Bloodlust are just going to be dead. And unless Nappa was able to get something really big off Stonehill Defender like Alec here, he had no real burst. And he didn't. He used both of them, got Hired Gun and Booty Bait Bodyguard. Very suboptimal choices here.
And Hoej just wants to ensure he has as much board presence as possible, and CitizenNappa has as little as possible. Taking out one of these Murlocs with a backstab, so suddenly CitizenNappa goes from having all the minions in the world. Okay, well, there's an Evolve.
Yeah, Evolve can hit Doomsayer.
Well, yes, it can hit Doomsayer off of the Igneous Elemental. Also does remove the Death Rattle from Igneous Elemental. I mentioned that it was a pretty weak card overall in this matchup, but it can at least remove the ability for Hoej to reload with that Igneous if it were to die normally.
All right, well, what can Nappa do in this position? I think a lot of people might immediately feel helpless and concede, but I think Nappa still might be able to hold out for a little bit. Maybe Hoej's holding just empty air in his hand, and he can turn it around by stalling, maybe get a big evolve off with Doppelganger, so he's able to draw into it and fight back the board through the war of attrition. So he's going to stick it out, but based on what we know, there's plenty more in the tank.
Yeah, this is looking very bad for CitizenNappa here. He wants to go ahead and ensure that he is going to force Hoej to at least trade into his minions, not able to get face damage in. He does not want to play the Flame Tongue Totem because he does not want to let that Igneous Elemental die and allow Hoej to reload more.
Yeah, Nappa, I really like to play for the Mana Tide Totem because I think you're going to try to dig into your deck and figure out what you can do. Ooh, Gadsden Ferryman, a pretty good draw to get Hoej more resources in case he needs to fight and flood the board even more.
Yeah, the Ferryman will allow him to both draw into the card with his Novice Engineer as well as heal it back up to full health, which means that CitizenNappa is going to be in even worse shape trying to actually deal with these minions.
Glacier Shard looked like it was aimed to the face, which indicates that Hoej is going for a full board clear. It does have enough mana to dagger up, and that should be able to deal with everything. A Mimic Pod. I mean, Hoej is not going to be hurting for resources at all, even if a big Devolve came off and cleared his board here. Would suck, though, to say the least, if it did happen.
Yeah, I mean, and that's, frankly, got to be something Hoej kind of keeps in mind. What are the ways I can possibly lose this game? And one of them is devolve into a Doomsayer, but he does commit the second Igneous here. He's going to leave up one of these Murlocs.
Right. I mean,
he wants to ensure that he just has so many minions on the board that Nappa needs to deal with all of them.
He did see one Devolve burned, so he feels like that's not really a card to be that concerned about. But it feels like that might be Nappa's last chance here.
Looks like he's just going wide here. I don't see him looking like he's going for the Devolve. It looks like he's just playing out a bunch of minions.
He's going to attack and then Devolve, perhaps?
I'm not really sure what the motivation to playing a bunch of things and then Devolve hoping for Doomsayer is.
You're right. If he devolves into the Doomsayer, then this would be a huge overcommitment on his side, and then his Bloodlust is a lot weaker, too.
He's just going to try and keep himself alive with Booty Bay Bodyguard.
Okay. And say, I'm going to be alive by 1 health.
I mean, here at CitizenNappa, if he does play the Bodyguard, spreads out these minions on the board, he's again forcing Hoej to just attack into all of these minions.
There are 83 2-mana minions in the game, and it is very unlikely that Doomsayer gets out here. But is that Nappa's best chance to win, which is, what, 2 to 3%? I think it's higher maybe if he gets the Taunt Totem.
Oh, he got a Taunt Totem, so he's not dead on board just yet.
It's 1 in 4 to hit the Taunt Totem, and it's 2 out of 83 to hit the Doomsayers. You tell me the
Double Mimic Pod, any Charger wins the game. That's a Charger.
And that's game 1 over to Hoej. A huge win for Hoej as he is 1 game closer to the semifinals. And CitizenNappa is going to be extremely unhappy that the Quest Rogue escaped. That was his exit point of this lineup.
Yeah, this is not only just an important game because, well, it's a game up in the series. This is the most important game because the Quest Rogue, as you mentioned earlier, is the single most important deck in each of these lineups to get through. It's a difficult deck to win against the aggressive lineups. We see Hoej just breathe a sigh of relief after that game because he knew that was very important.
But I mean, he played that matchup on point. He hesitated even when there were plays that seemed obvious, and he found a better line. He hedged against the bets that what Shaman can do on different turns, and he also made Shaman really uncomfortable in certain spots right at the perfect moment, because if Nappa didn't have the right tools, like the right removal pieces, Hoej would immediately win. Great recognition, great mastery demonstrated by that Quest Rogue.
Yeah, the single most impressive moment of that game to me was when he played the Brewmaster first and and then the engineer after the vanish, because he clearly recognized, I need the board presence now. I'm not looking for any kind of value, and that, frankly, I feel like is what won him the game.
That's right. And while Hoej may come off a little shy and nervous, he's got a little secret to keeping him calm, and it's through an animal.
Even though I've played like so many Hearthstone matches, I always get a little nervous when there's a lot of people watching. Pidgey is my bird. Sometimes like I read in chat that that bird is more famous than me on stream. It's like whenever I'm playing video games, she's like jumping around, flying around on my shoulder. And she's not shy. She's like very adventurous. I've tried to teach her some word, but it's difficult. Try to teach her smog. You know, smog from going face. She can only say a little of it. It's difficult. I'm kind of shy. Normally don't like all the spotlight. While my bird is more like not scared of anything and like wants to see what's going on. I don't know if it's helping that much, but sometimes people like making fun when I'm playing on stream and Pidgey's jumping around. It's like 2 versus 1. Do you think like Pidgey's my lucky charm? I like to think so, but probably not. If I win this tournament, I'm probably gonna get more in the spotlight. I'm not sure if I'm gonna like it, but Pidgey is definitely gonna like it.
All right, well, he doesn't have PD with him right now. It's a 1v1 competition, at least here in Shanghai, as Hoej is 1 game close. And has a little anxiety. He's looking on point.
Yeah, he's like the Bastion of Hearthstone. He's got his little animal companion there.
He is Bastion, that's right. Oh, that's really funny. I'm expecting an anime short shortly.
He'll voice Bastion.
It'll be nice.
Bastion doesn't actually say anything, right?
Well, definitely
like
not in
beeps
Danish.
and boops, I think. Yeah, probably. Well, I mean, maybe in the Danish version of Overwatch.
We'll see, we'll see. Let's turn to another matchup where CitizenNappa is favored. We have Pirate Warrior up against Murloc Paladin. Now, Hoej does have the double Tidecaller start, and CitizenNappa has a pretty awkward hand. He's in Nazav's first mate to piece it together, doesn't get it. This could be a good opportunity for Hoej to run away with the game.
Yeah, Nappa's hand is pretty bad. He has a couple of the cards he wants to finish the game off in Leroy Jenkins and Arcanite Reaper, whereas Hoej has many of the best cards in his deck early game, with a pair of Tidecallers and a Violent Inquisitor. He's going to go ahead and hold the coin, doesn't want to commit too much here. His deck does have a significant number of higher curve cards, even the Deathwing in his hand. So he doesn't want to just try and be ultra aggressive here and just play 2 1-drops when he has the easy 1/1 next turn to follow this up.
Yeah, I think it's heavily dependent on how he was drawing for the next turn there on turn 1. Solid choice of a champion, wants to follow a nice 1/2 and then coin into a 4-mana play. CitizenNappa gonna react to this Tidecaller by Heroic Strike. That takes a lot of discipline to not just try to get board control through minions. I like it.
Yeah, and CitizenNappa recognizing not only is the Tidecaller a significant threat, but the most important thing in this matchup is this early board presence, early board control. And he could kind of potentially seed that if his opponent just has a Rock Hunter and kills a minion. Ooh, picks up the Nazav's first mate, though. That is excellent, especially paired with the Bloodstone Raider and the upgrade.
Yeah, it's what Nappa needed on turn 1. Is it too late for him to win the board? I mean, Hoej has a lot of good options in the next couple turns here. He's got the Gentle Megasaur. Even just hitting on a single Murloc might be good enough to secure Hoej the board.
And Nappa could use his upgrade right now and take down the Tidecaller with his weapon. He could also play Accelerator, use Patches plus the weapon to take down the Tidecaller, and leave himself open next turn, potentially upgrade.
Yeah, I think he's right now doing some hand reading. He saw Hoej had 3 1-mana minions that he kept, and he's still on the coin. He says, what am I afraid of? Is it the Megasaur? How do I set up for the Megasaur? Or is it something else? Maybe he's saving coin for a Fidget later on. Do I play around that War Leader as well? This is something that's all going through his head. And I think in the end, it all comes down to, do I have the board as the Pirate Warrior? And I also love the mana efficiency of the Bloodstone Raider.
Actually switching it up, he looks like he's debating very, very long. This is interesting because the upgrade here means that he does keep his Patches alive, which is relevant for potentially protecting him. He does draw off, for instance, Bloodstone Cultist. He has more Pirates in play, though Hoej can just kill one of these with his Pirate here. He does have the Megasaur as well, as you mentioned. This would be a potentially big threat. I think maybe Nappa could have been thinking that he wanted to, just have a maximum board presence that he could here and have his mana available next turn to sort of optimize. You know, he can use hero power plus the Raider next turn as well. And he's also not vulnerable to a weapon taking out a significant minion this turn. For instance, a coin True Silver Champion here could have taken down the Bloodsun Raider. And now there's no really efficient target for something like that.
Right. And I think he was maybe banking on the fact that if Hoej wanted to go for Megasaur, he had a chance of getting Bloodsail Cultist, like you mentioned, and a bunch of other stuff. But Hoej is going to be able to go for a potential big swing here. And, you know, Gentle Megasaur on a one individual Murloc may seem like bad value, but remember how powerful even cards like Dark Iron Dwarf can be.
Grimy Gadgeteer, the draw for CitizenNappa. This is kind of the major standout tech decision of CitizenNappa's deck. We've seen most of the versions of Pirate Warrior in this tournament move away from playing Bortlestorm. And Grimy Gadgeteer in Nappa's list, I think, is the idea that it gives him a powerful tool in these aggressive mirror matches, because now he's going to have a gigantic, well, in this case, Leroy Jenkins just makes it a little bit more burst, but that could be important too.
But I think that's actually not what Nappa wanted.
No, it's not.
He really wants his Bloodsail Raider to kind of be out of that range of the True Silver Champion, because it'd be 5 health instead. And now Leroy Jenkins is more burst, like you said, but he needs to win through board control.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Usually you want this hitting on a minion. That's not a burn spell, effectively. Leroy Jenkins is basically a fireball.
Sure.
You want to hit it on something that helps you preserve your board presence and fight for that board in the middle of the game. So that was pretty poor result from that Gadgeteer for CitizenNappa.
You can take it slower, equip maybe the Arcanite Reaper instead, kill the 5/4, or use Heroic Strike and Bloodsail Raider, but Raider dies to the True Silver Champion. However, that champion's going to swing at something and get an efficient kill, and you're not developing anything onto the board for another turn if you play Arcanite Reaper.
It's a bit awkward here for Nappa. He sort of bounced up the Leroy briefly. That would be a I don't know, big hit, but
it's a very creative play.
You could Leroy down the Megasaur and just kill one of the minions with your weapon. Just not unreasonable.
It's just looking really bad.
He's going face now.
He's going
looks like
face.
So
all right.
His hand has, you know, Leroy for 8. He has the Arcanite Reaper. He's thinking, okay, I cannot fight for this board. Ooh, but Stonehill Defender,
yeah,
that's going to put a damper on Nappa's face plans.
Yeah, there were a handful of draws Hoej could have picked up here, but that is definitely one of the better ones. This or Wicker Flame Burn Bristle finds Sunkeeper Terran, which I don't know if he needs. Maybe he just cheaper taunts to set up for the Spike Ridge Steed next turn.
Yeah, the fact that Hoej does have Spike Ridge Steed, I think, really informs this decision, because he wants to get significant board presence here. He can just go ahead and use his hero power to make another minion, and potentially attack this Bloodsail Raider down with his weapon.
Yeah, I think it was one of those situations where Hoej is about to lock this game up unless CitizenNappa can find a way to his spell breakers and get past his Spike Ridge Steed. It's also even just going to be problematic. Look how much damage this Stonehill Defender will absorb, and then the card that it generated off of it.
Yeah, Hoej has just a ton of powerful tools. The Tarim, the Spike Ridge Steed. Captain Greenskin is a powerful card if you are in a position where you're getting significant weapon damage to face, but it is difficult for Nappa to fight back here, using pretty much all of his mana to Arcanite Reaper down just the Stonehill.
I'm trying to find a way for CitizenNappa to get out here, but if Spike Ridge Steed comes out and CitizenNappa gets a Spellbreaker, he doesn't have a way to close the damage, and he's accepting 7-9 damage on the following swing, which puts him in range for potentially dying the turn after anyways. So this is looking like Hoej's got this in the bag.
Yeah, not really seeing a great sequence for Nappa here that can lead to him winning the game. Like you said, even if it's the perfect card next turn, Spellbreaker, to deal with the Spike Ridge Steed, which is pretty clearly going to come down on Hoej's next turn. Ooh, even more burst. So CitizenNappa doesn't really even have the time.
Yeah, and I think Hoej's just going to do some calculations here. My opponent's been holding a card for a long time. It got buffed by the Grimy Gadgeteer. In what instance can I get really punished here if it's Spellbreaker? But he's at 18. What's the best way to set up 2-turn lethal without giving his opponent a way out of this game?
I mean, if he just attacks for 8 here, he Spellbreakers, or rather Spike Ridge Steeds, I guess if he does use the Spike Ridge Steed here, then if his opponent does have Spellbreak, he can just kill the Megasaur, but there still leaves the 1/1 Murloc, even if it is Silence, that he can just Blessing of Kings, and that's actually not quite enough.
Right. Hits it for 8, puts him down to 6. And then, if he gets silenced, and he just plays Terror and kills him. Even if through the hero power, because he's able to hit with the 5/4 and then Terror.
I wasn't even counting the damage done by Megasaur. That's going to be it. Yeah, I was thinking he can just kill for free, and he certainly cannot. He can't kill anything, and Hoej is going to take a 2-0 lead here in the series, and he is in a comfortable position to move on to the semifinals and the World Championship.
Back-to-back upsets in matchups. And that puts our birthday boy on the brink of elimination. That's right, if you guys are just tuning in, CitizenNappa's birthday is today on July 8th. And this guy is not happy to see himself down 0-2 right now. Or July 9th, excuse me. July 8th for some viewers back in the Western world.
Hard to keep track of what day it is. Traipsing around the world playing Hearthstone.
He's 20 years old, but he's 0-2 currently. CitizenNappa, a couple days ago, not many people even recognized him, but a few days later, after his dominating performance in Group A, the birthday boy is now one of the most famous players to be able to come this far into the Spring Championship.
For this tournament, nobody knew who I was.
From Australia, representing the Asia-Pacific region, it's CitizenNappa!
People didn't think I would advance out of Group A because I see big names like Hoej, Nyria, Muzzy. They think like that's the group of death or something. I was happy to prove them wrong. I know that I'm a dark horse, it's just that I feel that people don't know me because they haven't seen me play. One of my strengths is to be able to look at the game and filter out all the elements that you can't control, like who's in your group. Surviving Group A feels very good to me because it meant that I conquered some of the best players in the world. It feels unreal to be one match away from qualifying for the World Championships.
It is his birthday, and he has conquered Group A, featuring very strong players like Muzzy, Nyria, X-Hope, some of the world's best. But yet, he is at death's doorstep. One game away from elimination. Can he survive, Kibler?
Well, he has to win 3 straight games against Pirate Warrior. And one of those games has to be with Quest Rogue, so it's going to be very tough. One thing that is worth noting, Hoej's version of Pirate Warrior has a couple of interesting inclusions itself. One of those that really stands out is 2 Spellbreakers. So Spellbreaker is actually a card that is relatively low impact in a lot of the aggressive mirror matches because it just has a small body and often doesn't necessarily get a great target to silence. So that could be, compared to the grimy gadget. There's a Nappa's version, something that does switch some of these games around.
Yeah, now Hoej is kind of on the receiving end of an awkward Pirate Warrior draw.
There's a Spellbreaker.
This is kind of what the deck does, though. A lot of people accuse Pirate Warrior of being very draw-dependent deck, primarily because if it gets the early game curve, it's unstoppable. But because of so many tech decisions that people have put in the 4 and 5 mana slot, you are more susceptible to those draws because Pirate Warriors have largely peeled away from all-inning on the early game.
Yeah, and Hoej does not have any of the 1-drop pirates. He does not have a Fiery War Axe. His turn 2 here may just be armor up, and he's doing a Control Warrior cosplay here or something like that, but that's not how you win these matches.
Yeah, and of course the deck lists are revealed, and they've seen Hoej play this deck,
so
CitizenNappa is well aware. It's like, well, maybe it's a Quest Warrior that mulliganed the Quest. It's absolutely not the case here.
No, not going to happen. And Nappa's hand is fairly strong here. He has the Firefly, Flame Elemental, and Bloodsuck Corsair for very significant early board presence. And Pirate Warrior is a deck that can really struggle to deal with wide boards. It's very good at dealing with individual minions with weapon swings, but if your opponent gets, say, 3 or 4 minions on the board, it doesn't really have great tools for attacking into a bunch of different small minions.
I'm trying to imagine a world where Hoej can justify using this Heroic Strike, because, I mean, his curve for the next few turns are going to be taking away the moment of Heroic Strike.
Wow.
Looks like he goes for it. This is a play that, the more I thought about, the more it kind of makes sense, because he's going to be drawing additional cards into what the Frothing Berserker and Core Elite turns, which, assuming he does, means that he won't have timed Heroic Strike, and if he lets that minion survive, if he has Flame Tongue Totem or anything else to bolster it, it's going to be trouble.
Yeah, and definitely paying respect to the threat of that early board presence from the Shaman. And I mean, that just feels so bad. You're trading, you're trading a Heroic Strike for a Firefly. You know there's just another Flame Elemental waiting.
Right, but you have to kind of understand, and this is a good demonstration from Hoej to show that he understands what this matchup's about. You don't win this matchup from Pirate Warrior side by going face with Heroic Strike a lot of times. You win through board control. Yes, Heroic Strike can be the damage that gets you over the top, but a lot of times you have to get repetitive damage through minions repeatedly hitting your opponent's face.
It's very difficult to win by just getting, a couple of burns. You don't have that much burn in your deck. You really do need to connect with your Pirates, and Nappa, he is planning out his turns very carefully here. He wanted to coin out and ensure that his Flame Tongue Totem is able to answer the Frothing Berserker here.
Right.
So he decided that he wanted to coin out just the Firefly and use his hero power to also discount the Thing from Below, so once he plays the Flame Tongue Totem this turn, he has potentially a 4-mana Thing from Below as well next turn.
Right, but then he also maybe was banking on playing the Bloodstone Raider or some kind of board presence like that, and it might be floating a mana if he just goes for Flame Tongue this turn.
Well, Flame Tongue plus Bloodsail does give him the ability to clear this and have some development as well. He does get to get the immediate attack off the patches, though that you do end up with the right side of the board empty for your Flame Tongue at that point. And the Corsair is obviously a card that actually has value in terms of his battle cry in this matchup because removing your weapons is extremely strong.
It's a huge value.
Yeah.
It's one of the things that could swing a game if you're holding an Arcanite Reaper and you're trying to upgrade it, or Fiery War Axe. Hard decision.
Nappa just trying to be as mana efficient as possible here. Yeah. He wants to ensure that he has board presence.
Right, because again, what really does matter a lot of times in this matchup is the board presence, and getting that extra 1-2, which if the Flame Tongue Totem powers to a 3-2, could end up giving him an edge. But now Hoej has an opportunity to answer that Flame Tongue Totem very easily.
Ooh, draws patches. It always feels especially bad to draw patches when you're actually playing Pirate Warrior. Like when you draw patches and you're playing Shaman or you're playing Druid, all right, you got 2 Pirates in your deck.
Right.
So you drew patches before you drew your other 2 Pirates or whatever. In Pirate Warrior, your deck is full of Pirates. So when you try your patches before you've played a single Pirate, it feels especially painful. This is actually a situation where the Spellbreaker from Hoej could have some value, but it looks like he's going to go ahead and Fulcron Elite instead. Yeah. Spellbreaker can also help punch through Thing from Below's Taunt, which can be extremely important for attacking protected minions as well.
Big draw here from CitizenNappa, getting the Jade Lightning immediately there. He's trying not to overreact and instantly play it. Maybe give Hoej some false information. This it does end up being relevant too. If CitizenNappa immediately played the Jade Lightning off the top, it might give Hoej a clue like, oh, maybe you didn't have another Jade Lightning. But if CitizenNappa hesitates, he thinks about himself a little bit more.
It's generally good policy to take your time when you're playing an event, especially of this magnitude. These players are playing on one of Hearthstone's biggest stages here, and the stakes are incredibly high. You can respect the fact that sometimes they do go to the rope.
Sometimes.
If it's all the time, then maybe not. But
Hoej does have a way to set up for a very powerful next turn. Because he drew patches, the best way he can make up for that difference in the deficit now is to utilize patches to activate the Bloodsail Cultist. So if he has a Fiery War Axe next turn, I think he probably doesn't want to set up in case he has a second Bloodsail Corsair. I'm leaning towards a Quarterfinals lead this turn and trading into one of those minions for a nice value trade.
I think that Hoej is going along that same thought process. There is the fact that his patches, if he does attack with his Quarterfinals lead this turn, may lose a little value because there isn't necessarily going to be a 1-1 in play.
Right. It's kind of like the second Bloodsail Corsair or the second Flame Tongue Totem is what really gives him trouble. There isn't in either side, but Hoej ends up using the Spellbreaker instead. That's interesting. I always think that Spellbreaker has a lot of value, but Hoej, I think, is using the first Spellbreaker because he knows he has a second one versus the second Quarterfinals Elite, so he's keeping his options flexible. Nice.
All right, well, you don't often see just the tempo doppelgangster, but this is one of the matchups where it in no way gets punished. Oh, wow, that Dread Corsair. Wow. This can be a huge swing turn for Hoej. He can play Patches, War Axe, Cultist, Corsair. and suddenly come out of nowhere and have significant presence on this board. And interestingly, because he silenced the spell damage totem, rather than killing it, there's not even a chance for Nappa to roll another one. And, give him the spell damage Maelstrom Portal that could help clear that very strong board.
That was a trick from Hunter back in the old days, to silence the Stone Claw Totem with the Iron Beak out.
Yes.
You remember that? Oh, I remember because you were playing a lot of Shaman in the very beginning of Hearthstone when you first played. I remember that happened to you. That's a very painful moment when you realize you can't summon that totem any longer. It has to die first. If there's another play, I'm also open to it. Hoej does have, core currently, like we mentioned, but I have a hard-pressed time to find a better swing turn than this right now.
He can take out so much of.
Interesting.
Huh? He's not going to go ahead and play the patches. He just wants to upgrade here. Interesting.
This is, of course, a very deliberate move, and maybe he wants to hold on to the patches for other Pirate synergy. And I think it's because he's hedging around Maelstrom.
Sure. And the second Maelstrom Portal, though, picked up for Nappa. That's actually very, very big.
Well, he only needs one, really, to get a good effect, 'cause then he can play Think from Below right behind it.
I think the second one allows him to kill this entire board here, which I think is pretty crucial.
Okay,
This is very much a board-centric game, and in particular, you're killing both your opponent's pirates here. So if there were a future Blood Cell Raider, right, making that, straining that even further.
CitizenNappa knows Hoej's holding patches.
He does.
Yeah,
yes.
that's something that I forgot to factor in. Captain Greenskin just kind of puts this Fire War Axe into Arcanite Reaper range. But there's no good target, so good thing Nappa didn't play that Thing from Below, because it sets up for a really powerful upgrade. That's perhaps another thing CitizenNappa was accounting for.
Once again, taking his time. This is a very rough spot for him still. Nappa's still at 30 life. So even with that War Axe turned Ashbringer, he's only halfway there if every single swing connected.
Right, which means he definitely needs to win through the board presence in some capacity.
Yeah, we're talking early in the match, in this game rather, that this isn't a matchup that you win just through throwing damage to your opponent's face. You really need to be able to repeatedly connect with minions, and that's what makes Nappa's significant board presence already so threatening, because it's going to make it very difficult for Hoej to ever stick anything on the board.
I think Hoej's also calculating potential Bloodlust damage with 3 plus the 15, that's 18. Doesn't want to flirt with disaster, so plays the patches this turn, which I anticipate a trade. Where's he go with his weapon?
I'd be hard-pressed to go anywhere but face here. Wow, okay. That's a lot of damage. He's now sunk a
tough decision.
5 damage weapon string and a heroic strike into 2 Fireflies this game.
That's tough.
One of these even off of a Maelstrom Portal, wasn't even a real Firefly.
Yeah. And a lot of people might start piecing that damage together, but imagine how different of a board state is when Shaman has extra minions with Flame Tongue Totems like that came out, or extra minions that threaten with Bloodlust. It's a very difficult situation, and that's what merely makes or breaks a lot of these top-level Pirate Warrior games. When do you trade versus when do you go face?
Yeah, Hoej definitely recognizing that he needs to be able to connect with minions. He needs to be able to keep hitting Nappa in the face with minions multiple times, not just get those weapon strikes in.
Yeah, I like this from CitizenNappa. Just going wide into the board. Your opponent's very clearly afraid of some kind of Bloodlust. Set yourself up to get lucky in that position. You also keep discounting Thing from Below for potential follow-up swing turns.
The Frothing Berserker from Hoej is a decent draw, but given the Devolve in Nappa's hand, it's unlikely to really do much of anything particularly impactful in this game.
Yep, and kind of the downside of the core crown lead is that there's so many small minions that can trade pretty efficiently into it. Although it's one thing is clear is that CitizenNappa does not have the Evolve, and both Doppelgangster have been used. In this case, the way CitizenNappa's been playing really signals that he has the Bloodlust, so Hoej might have to play control yet again and swing once again with his weapon, not to the face.
Frothing's kind of hovering, hanging out. Not frothing yet. He's relaxing before he starts to froth.
Yeah, and very crucially too, Hoej can't kill off one of these Doppelgangsters and prevent Captain Greenskin from dying. These little 1/1s and prevent Captain Greenskin or Core Crown from dying. He's going all face.
It's time. Wow. Hoej decides I can no longer fight for the board, and now it is time to fight for the face.
If he has Bloodlust, he has it. He doesn't have it.
There is the Devolve, which will take the bite out of some of these minions.
A lot of bite on average. Wait, what?
One core card only. He just stepped a little to the right there.
Wow. Nice sidestep there. Pretty much about average stats. A 4-mana minion is around that, like a 3-4 or a 4-3. So nothing out of the ordinary here for CitizenNappa to respond to. And he's looking for an opportunity to try to keep getting that Taunto. This is the most important thing.
Yep.
He's been toteming every turn since he knows that the way to beat the Pirate Warrior is through guaranteeing himself a Taunt Totem every single turn if possible.
And now not only does he have a Taunt Totem, he has a thing from below. And Hoej is totally out of cards, while Nappa is now drawing for the Mana Tide. This is going to be pretty tough for Hoej to find any way to win. South Sea Captain, not particularly good when he's alone.
Yeah, and Hoej going to just play it out to see what else he could get, but CitizenNappa looks like he's going to run away with the rest of this game. It was pretty close in the very mid stages there, but ended up not being close at all at the very end of it. CitizenNappa with a second Jade Lightning. The only way this could go disastrously if Nappa gets greedy and evolves for no reason.
Yeah.
He can just hero power at best.
Interestingly, I think he does not want to play the Primal Fin because then he would fill his board and not really be able to play like a future Stonehill Defender or some sort of other taunt minion.
Right.
And he would have 5-0 attack minions on the board.
You just don't want to prevent yourself from ever being in a situation where Stoneclaw Totem is not guaranteed.
Right.
If you have to trade in another minion like the 1/1 Searing Totem, then you're completely stranded on your hero power, which is the most powerful thing in the late stages of this game. In any matchup, aggro shaman, mid-range shaman, evolved shaman, control shaman. Taunt totems, give Pirate Warrior fits.
Arcanite Reaper, well, that hit the Stoneclaw Totem.
But yeah, but it doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
It just sums it again. This is why it's really important in hero power. And now Hoej's best draw is the second Spellbreaker, because then he can silence Stoneclaw. CitizenNappa picks up another taunt. And here's the thing, CitizenNappa's not putting a significant amount of pressure on without that Bloodlust. And until that Mana Tide is able to fish it out or he draws it naturally, Hoej still has some time here.
Yeah, but he doesn't really have time to do anything meaningful. He has no Mortal Strikes in his deck. He has no real way to break through here besides that second Spellbreaker, and then he still needs to piece together the rest of the damage.
Well, Dread Corsair is not going to really get him there. And CitizenNappa also picked up the Stonehill Defender, so with multi-layer taunts, looking really unlikely here from Hoej. Pretty much dipped to 0% in my eyes. He's got 3, 7, 9 damage right now. I guess if you evolve, it's lethal. If you're able to get the right minions. If you want to be cheeky like
Missed
that.
Evolve lethal.
Is there any way for CitizenNappa to throw in this position? I have a hard time believing it. He's at 16 health. Hoej's holding 1 card. Even if it was Spellbreaker, he would have to generate 11 damage with 1 other individual card.
I mean, even if he evolved and just got Doomsayer here, I think Nappa still just wins because he has enough powerful cards remaining in his hand. Hoej now at 3 life if this goes fast.
Yeah, there are worlds where, like, if you evolve and you get things like Bomb Squad or other ways you can get damage, but there's no need for it. And Hoej picks up upgrade. It's not going to do it. CitizenNappa stays alive, but that is just the beginning of a large and long uphill climb.
Yeah, Nappa still needs to win with his own Pirate Warrior deck, but most importantly, he needs to beat Pirate Warrior with Quest Rogue, and that is going to be tough.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to stall for it. Right now, he still has his Pirate Warrior, so he's going to go for the Pirate Warrior Mirror. And Hoej's not going to draw bad, or, statistically unlikely to draw that bad every single game. Because remember, he didn't draw anything the first 2 turns of play. He drew his patches. That's very unlikely to happen every single game. But for Nappa's sake, he has to hope that it does.
Yeah, and Hoej really did have a terrible opening that game. He had no turn 1 play, had a Heroic Strike on a Firefly turn 2. And there was a while in the game that it was still pretty competitive. Ultimately, Nappa did run away with it at the end, but it could have gone either way for a while.
Yeah, and this could put him on his last game. We'll find out coming up in just a few seconds. But we're just getting started with our quarterfinals. Coming up next, we have yet another great best of 5. to get their ticket to the World Championship. Hoej, 1 game away from going to Worlds.
And he's someone who has been competing at the top level, at and around the top level of Hearthstone for a number of years now. He first made his mark a couple of years ago, I believe it was the Via Game House Cup that he won. And he has been a practice partner with many of the players who are considered the best in the world. Zixo, Surrender from Korea. They've worked together for a number of years now, all had a lot of success, and now Hoej on the brink of making it to the World Championship.
You know, one of the interesting things is I consider Hoej's teammate, Zixo, to be one of the top players in the world. For a long period of time last year, I considered him the best player in the world and still carrying on to 2017. And I asked Zixo, you know, you tend to criticize people very harshly for mistakes. What player do you think makes the least amount of mistakes, or who do you think is the best player in the world? And normally I expect players to kind of say themselves or someone that they practice with, and immediately, without thinking, Zixo said Hoej. Hoej is, in my opinion, hands down the best player in the world. And I can start to see why, because when he puts his game plan together, he finds outs and lines that other people would not in that position.
He's going to have his work cut out from him in this one. A very strong start from Nappa. He's off first mate, one of the strongest cards in terms of win rate in this deck.
Absolutely, it is the highest win rate card in this deck. Not by that much of a percentage base compared to everything else, because Pirate Warrior can piece together pretty much anything. Like even coining Fiery War Axe, not necessarily in this position, but in a lot of plays, in a lot of games, can actually be just as high as a win percentage because you're trying to stabilize on the board.
All right, and Hoej's going to go ahead and upgrade immediately. So we talked a little bit in the last game about how difficult it is for Pirate Warrior to deal with a lot of early small minions, and Hoej recognizing if he does let these minions just keep hitting him turn after turn, that damage adds up.
Yep.
So he wants to commit his upgrade now just to effectively deal with the bodies off the N'Zoth first mate.
Yeah, if you kind of think about upgrade, it does around 3 to 4 damage on a Fiery War Axe by upgrading it for an extra swing. Sometimes a little bit more depending on if you get it early on. Upgrade just as itself is 3 damage, but if you spread it out, and that allows Hoej to, if he picks up minions, budget his resources for a better push. And
South Sea Captain is a great draw from Hoej here. South Sea Captain buffing patches when it comes out of your deck is extremely strong.
Yeah, that's pretty much the ideal 3-mana minion play here, because he doesn't have a Bloodsail Cultist. If he wants to coin it out, his curve for the following turn looks to be either some kind of combination of Heroic Strike and Fiery War Axe and the South Sea Deckhand. If the South Sea if the South Sea Captain lives, that means just the upgrade and the South Sea Deckhand alone should be able to answer every 3-mana minion from CitizenNappa. So Hoej's in a pretty good spot if he coins out the South Sea Captain.
I'm just going to play War Axe.
Okay.
Take things slow.
Taking it very slow, so he wants to guarantee a buff on the South Sea Captain. And again, I mean, Hoej sees lines 3-4 turns down the road.
One big element of this is that very often players will want to ensure that their patches can actually get a valuable trade the turn that it comes out of their deck. So you just get patches in for damage, and then it gets killed by, say, a weapon swing. Like if Nappa, for instance, is upgraded, killed it. That board presence, that ability to manage resources in the early to middle turns of the game is one of the most important things in a matchup like this.
I like it. No, you're absolutely right. It's not really about that early game damage to the opponent's health total. It's about board control. And that's why a lot of people, even if they have South Sea Deckhand turn 1, sometimes don't play it in the Pirate Warrior mirror because they want to get that patch to trade into their opponent's N'Zoth's first mate or patches.
Yeah, if you play your Deckhand turn 1 and your opponent plays N'Zoth's first mate, you get crushed.
You lose.
You are crushed because they just develop their minions, and they have a weapon that kills your minions.
Yeah.
And that's what matters. And now we see the rope burning. CitizenNappa trying to figure out exactly how he wants to manage this.
This is tough pill to swallow because you know the Fire War Axe immediately gets value, and once again, you're playing from behind. Hoej is actually really confused. That's the first time I think he's furrowed his brow that much, and he actually glanced out towards CitizenNappa to see, like, what is in your hand?
The Dread Corsair here is also pretty big because Dread Corsair, buffed by the Captain, can potentially give him the ability to protect the Captain itself,
yes,
which can buff his other minions.
And patches, too.
And patches.
Which means CitizenNappa, even if he got the upgrade on any kind of weapon, it means that he couldn't answer the patches. This is looking like it's going to be a blowout soon unless CitizenNappa draws really well. even then, he needs a 2-mana minion to be able to do something efficiently here, and I don't see what it is unless it's like Galaka Crawler. It has to be something that dramatic for him to come back.
Spellbreaker can remove the ability of the captain, which at least takes some of the damage off this board. But the Spellbreaker will just die to the Fiery War X-Wing, and there's still the body of the captain as well as the other 2 pirates on the board.
This is a disaster for Nappa. And if he Spellbreakers, like you said, not only will he just get that Fiery War Axe trade, but he's also accepting 7 damage onto the board, and that's when the wheels start coming off the jet here, where he really needs to be able to stabilize against the damage. But if your opponent is 2 minions or 3 minions ahead, you're in for quite the beating.
Oh my God, Bloodcell Cultist for Hoej. That is one of the most powerful cards in this entire deck. And it's going to just continue snowballing this board advantage that he has developed.
Ouch. And CitizenNappa raises his eyebrows because he knows what time it is. Huge punishment. What can he draw here to get him out of the situation?
Pirate Warrior is so bad at dealing with these wide boards. There are 5 minions on Hoej's side of the board, and Nappa, his weapon swings, even with Heroic Strike, can only kill 1 at a time. This is looking incredibly bad for the Australian player.
I can't find a line. I am trying my best here, but if he goes for Heroic Strike and Frothing Berserker, dies to the weapon, accepts 9 damage, and he's back down to 12. That's assuming Hoej even wants to trade. He might even just go face and kill him.
I think the birthday boy may not be getting his present.
The balloons have been deflated. And the presents did not come through. He asked for a victory to go through Worlds. And in best of 5, single elimination here in the top 8. It looks like Nappa's chances are dwindling by the minute.
Hoej is just 2 damage away from lethal this turn.
Yeah, but I mean, he can take it easy here. There's no need to rush. He knows his opponent's really far behind. The biggest limitation for Nappa, even if he's down in cards, is his mana. He can't do much for 6 mana, and he can also threaten his opponent. Hoej's probably doing a mental checklist. What other cards do I have to account for? Oh, he's got Grimy Gadgeteers. That does nothing in this position.
Right. Gadgeteer is great if you're ahead. It can snowball your advantage, but Hoej is the one with the advantage now, and Gadgeteer is just a useless body that will not defend him at all.
I mean, look how much damage he has. I don't even think going all face is wrong in this position.
Blood and plunder.
I think there's no reason not to kill off the Frothing Berserker to kind of deny your opponent a chance to maybe come back with some weird, obscure combo that you're not thinking of, considering that you also have another Fiery War Axe, but I wouldn't hate a face attack here either.
Thought it was 2 damage off. He's 1 damage off. Even closer.
The number could be over 9,000 for all I care about, Kibler. Hoej is pretty much 1 turn away from going to the World Championships and to the semifinals.
Captain Greenskin is not it. Korkan Elite, not enough. The Heroic Strike in his hand will seal the deal for Hoej. And that's it. He's going to take the series 3 games to 1, and Hoej wins and will be going to the World Championship.
Congratulations to Hoej as a smile overtakes his face. The first positive emotion I've seen come over his face in quite some time. He has done it. Europe is on the map again. Guaranteed themselves 3 spots in Worlds and 1 person in the semifinals. CitizenNappa, it's not his day, but boy, did he rustle some feathers on his way to a top 8. Another shout out to him, but the moment belongs to Hoej from Denmark.
And look at the smile on Hoej's face. The incredible emotion we saw when he qualified for this event, when he made the semifinals of the playoffs, and now he's making good on that qualification. He's going to Worlds.
He was on the stage before. He was in the top 8 for the 2015 Europe Championship. He was denied by his teammate, Oskaka, who went on to win the World Championship. A lot of unfulfilled dreams, but today is not that day. Hoej has finally achieved part 1 of his goal. Next is to win this championship and go to Worlds.
I think there's a bird
Ali
singing somewhere.
is waiting with Hoej, our first semifinalist here in the spring season.
All right, everyone, let's hear it for Hoej. 再次掌声恭喜我们的胜者 Hoej. Wow, what a good game. 当然，我们也要恭喜CitizenNappa。他虽然说输了这场比赛，但是呢非常有潜力。毕竟今天是他20岁的生日啊。 20岁就能到世界舞台上进行表演啊！当然，他今天赢的话，可能生日过得更加开心。不过，我相信他的未来还是前途无量的。那么现在，让我们来采访一下我们的胜者 Hoej。So Hoej, before the game, you mentioned that so for this event, it will not be successful for you if you didn't make it to the top 4. Now you made it. How are you feeling?
Like I've been fighting to get to the World Championship for like 3 years now. So like getting there now is insane. It's amazing. I'm so happy right now.
Just really, really happy, thrilled, right? So you're like China a lot, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Very good. 那我刚才问的 Hoej 呢，是他在这次大赛之前说过，如果不进前4，对他来说就没有任何的意义，因为进到前4意味着明年可以进入到世界锦标赛的总决赛。他已经为这个目标呢奋斗了3年了，但是今天他做到了，总算在中国也算是个福地。我们中国的炉石爱好者们给他掌声鼓励一下好吗 ？Right, really good. They all really love you, right? So you want to say anything specifically to the Chinese fan? Obviously, this is a great place for you.
Thanks for cheering. It's awesome crowd. China's great. Thanks, guys.
OK， 他说非常感谢大家，大家都特别的棒。All right, so thank you very much. All the best for the next game. Right， 大家掌声送给我们的 Hoej。
It's not just China that's happy for the Dane. You look at social media. I'm just going to read some of the tweets. Amnesiac tweets, Hoej played really well, deserved to win. You look at Sixo saying, unbelievably happy for this moment. Thanks, everybody. Chalky tweets, can someone throw a game already so I can tweet something? Hashtag HCT. It's been a fun journey so far, but not just for this player, Hoej, but you can see that it took a village to really raise a player of this caliber. He practiced with so many people, put so much time and effort in, and all of his peers are happy for him.
Yeah, as Sottle actually said on Twitter as well, Hoej, one of the good guys. Everyone is happy to see Hoej move through and make it to the World Championship.
Yeah, I have a little anecdote before we head over to TJ Nannibald for their thoughts. At the very beginning of 2014, when Hoej started winning tournaments, I went to him and I said, hey, man, I think a lot of people are not necessarily accustomed to you winning because you're beating a lot of the favorites. You know, show a little bit more of your personality, maybe throw in a little trash talk here and there. Of course, this was me, young, naive host, throw it in. And then he kind of said something that was a little bit trash talky, and then it just didn't fit right. Hoej is such a good guy because he wants to help everybody out, and I feel guilty to this day because he's just a genuine guy through and through.
Trying to turn him into a heel,
I
are
know,
you?
I tried, but like that was just me being completely misunderstanding what this kind of guy is. Couldn't be more elated for him.
Yeah, he's a face through and through, absolutely.
All right, well, the first quarterfinal is done. We have one semifinalist, but plenty more action as day 3 has just begun. Hoej has defeated CitizenNappa of Australia by a score of 3-1. What's going to happen? Stay tuned and find out.